Hello everybody, my name's Peter Grindrod. I'm a Professor of Mathematics here in the Mathematical Institute at Oxford, and I'm a former Member of Council of EPSRC and also a former Member of Council for BBSRC. Today I want to talk about discovery science, and in particular curiosity-led science and industry-led science. Now, the role of public funding in providing underpinning science for the economy, for industrial and commercial players, is quite clear. We have to do the research funded by the British taxpayer that the companies can't necessarily do themselves or even justify to their own shareholders. The point is, if they could justify it to their own shareholders, then they would do so, and the shareholders will say, well, do double, because you've recognised where the payback, where the return on this investment could be. So one of the roles of public funding is to fund the things that aren't so obvious, that are maybe high risk, that require a platform of initial activity that companies don't have access to, that require a combination of skills that companies can't easily assemble, that have a long time scale, much longer than the gestation of their own R&D programs. So there's real good reason why the public money should be put into discovery science to take the risks and to produce disruptions which are going to affect key sectors of the economy. Now, when we started a few years ago with the government's industrial strategy, this was all predicated on the idea that if we allow companies themselves to come and front up and define what the roadmaps should be, that would be enough. But clearly it isn't. All companies already have their R&D roadmaps, and they tend to think inside their silo, inside their own boxes, and they won't easily forget their own roadmaps or unpick them. But discovery science is about thinking outside of the box, sometimes so far that there isn't even a box to be outside of. My point is that the country as a whole has to invest in a portfolio of science. So if you imagine the industrial strategy as being a portfolio of scientific endeavours, maybe half of it, maybe 70% of it should be within the current paradigm and should be funding what these large companies know that they're going to need. But maybe 30% of it should be outside of those current paradigms. The only thing we know about the unknown unknowns is that they're out there and they will turn up, they will disrupt. And when we get disruptive science, that's when there's a chance for the UK's economy to exploit those key ideas and to create new jobs, products and services. Now, the problem is that if we hypothecate everything into the industry-led things, we'll only get incremental improvements within their current paradigms. They're not looking for these disruptions, and they're certainly not looking for investigator-led or curiosity-led science. Now, in the basic sciences, mathematics, chemistry and physics, we all know that sometimes investigators have to act like policemen, or the way that policemen should, and we have to follow the evidence to wherever it goes. And it is that kind of investigator-led discovery science that we need to invest in. Secondly, we need to investigate in curiosity-led science, where we can see new things happening, new opportunities, innovations within the science. Very often we use the term innovation in a government sense to mean multidisciplinary and exploitable, but I'm saying it's possible to innovate within the basic science and to produce new discoveries which can then find where they'll have a home and an impact. From the point of view of companies, of course, they need to have university science within their network. One, in case we discover something lethal, so that they can get early sight and early access to it. Two, so that when the game changes and they find themselves up against new national and international competitors, they've got people like us to come and talk to and try and find out what kind of science might be best for them. There's a myriad of opportunities for mathematics, especially in my area, which is data science, but we should not forget that the UK, if we just do what business says, we won't be satisfying what the taxpayer should need. It was a fundamental error to leave out discovery science from the industrial strategy. And indeed, the taxpayer really expects that kind of science to be done as part of a balanced portfolio. Now, our universities really failed to stand up to this challenge, so did the research councils, and there's a reason for that, because they probably felt that if they raised too many objections to the industrial strategy paradigm, then they'd be put on the naughty step and wouldn't be allowed to take part in some of the wonderful things that are happening within those thematic and industry-led silos. So in a certain sense, they were bought off. But privately, they will probably all admit that we've really lost key support for investigator-led science and curiosity-led science. And that's what we need to get back. The UK as a nation is actually very good at this. We're actually very good at turning out authoritative, world-class scientists, but we need to back them. And we need to back them in fundamental sciences where the disruptions can be greatest. So I would say we're not in a comfortable position now. The current mechanisms, which involve spending quite large amounts of money strategically quite quickly, are over multidisciplinary. They are not focused on curiosity-led science. They do not build careers by funding investigator-led science, and therefore they do not serve the UK economy in the way that they should. It's an opportunity going missing, and it needs to be put right. And that starts with getting it right in the industrial strategy and the strategic priorities fund. Everything doesn't have to be multidisciplinary. Everything doesn't have to be industry-led. We have to get out of the silos, get out of the roadmaps that industry currently has, and think about roadmaps which may stretch ahead for decades. Thanks very much, everybody.